I think you asked something about also heroes. Hands down, I always say this, hands down, the most heroic person, I mean, the person in my life was my mother. She was 5'2", dark skinned, Jamaican Jewish woman from all the background I mentioned, and fearless. My mother was badass. Just let me give you one story to tell you how badass my mother was, and you all could do the beep when the expletive comes.
Do your thing, man.
Okay. I had a friend, and a lot of people don't know it's because today people stereotype the folks of color in the projects and but whites used to live in the projects.
Yeah, they still do.
Yeah, and so I had a friend, Michael Penzabeni. I could say his name. We're friends to this day, right? But this is elementary school. So his case, his mother's side is Jewish and his father's side is Sicilian Catholic, and lived at the projects. And one time I went to hang out with Mike, and when I left, we had to walk through a white neighborhood. I had to walk through that to get to where I live. So I'm walking, and this is early 70s, so I'm like really skinny, and I have a big afro. I used to say I look like a lollipop, And I'm walking, and I hear, "Hey, Afro boy." So, walking. "Hey, Afro boy." So then, the N-word's coming up. And then I stuck up a middle finger. I couldn't imagine so many white boys coming out. I mean, teenagers coming out of the woodwork. They were just completely surrounding me. So they were like, what do you... So I understand, some people want to be tough, but they're not gangster. You know what I mean? If you're going to try to fight someone, fight them. But they got to talk a lot. So I had a metal pick in my back pocket.
You were ready for this.
And they're coming, and they're like, what are you doing, here, I said, I'm doing what I want to do. So then they were like, well, why don't you go back to where you come from? And one of them had an Italian flag. I said, well, after you go back to Italy. And they were like, yo, this is a feisty one, right? Because they're like, why don't you go back to Africa, And as they're going, in my mind, I was sizing each one up because I figured if I'm going to die right now, I'm going to take a bunch of them with me. So I already planned, because I studied Kung Fu. So I was going to take the pick, one in the face, the other one, ribs, down, and then they'll have to cover me. That's what was going through my mind.
I like it.
As this is going to a high pitch, a blonde kid rides up on a bicycle, and he says, "What's wrong with you all? He must be 11 years old." Right? These guys are like 17, So there's, and at that moment, it like cleared the air. And they said, "Well, you can go, but never walk back in this neighborhood." And I said, "I'll walk wherever I want," right? So I get home, told my mother what happened. And remember, I said, she's this little black woman, right? At this point, when this takes place, she would have to be just 30 years of age, right? Because 19, so I'm 11 years old. They said, what? Next day, my mother grabs my hand, and we walk into that neighborhood. Don't see those boys. I started asking around. They said, might be at the park. So we go to the park, and there they were, all those boys. My mother walks up to them and says, "You told my son he can't walk in this neighborhood?" The guys were like shocked. "What? Did you?" She went to each one of them. And then she said, "Look, my son will walk wherever he wants. If any of you ever mess with my son, I will come here and I will effing kill you." She pointed to each of them. And she said he'll walk wherever he wants. And we walked out. Now, at that moment, I was thinking, and I think they were just thinking, huh? And at that point, I'm thinking, it's my mother. That's my mom. And the thing about her that was really cool was, first of all, she was drop dead fine. Whenever my mother would be at a bus stop, cars would start circling because she was just beautiful. The other thing was she was so gifted, just so smart, and she was brave, and And there were all these other cool things about her. And I remember she would always say, in life, it doesn't matter what you study. Getting educated is good. She would just so you know, some people, especially immigrants, people were like, you got to be a doctor, you got to be an engineer. You know, that was never my mother. If when she saw me doing everything from botany to music to whatever, she was like, yep, do it. You know, she just loved learning. We would just, when you walked in, you may have seen some Chinese checkers upstairs. She would just rock Chinese checkers and all of these things. But the thing about her is she was always helping people. That spirit. When she got killed, it was at her funeral. It was crazy because we didn't. It was just such a shock. We didn't even have time to send out notices. It was just by phone calls. More than 1,800 people showed up.
Wow.
Love.
And every single one of them had a story of how my mother helped them.
Wow.
And mind you, she wasn't rich or anything like that. But every single one. One woman said she was in a car accident. She didn't call her husband. She called my mother to meet her with the ambulance to take her because she knew my mother, she would get through the emergency room with safety. My mother was involved in union activism. She was involved in lots of other things. She was just, she had this sense that anything wrong was life calling you to do something. It doesn't mean that you're going to be able to be a god and fix everything. It was just for you to figure out what your role is in it. So and it was funny too because I remember when I was a little boy, I have all these memories because she would, remember I told you I started school at 3? Mm-hmm. I remember to this day, I remember my first day of school. She walked with me. She showed me the keys and everything. She showed me each person, and she told me in. And then she had to go to work. So I followed her stuff, came home, and then she said, oh, good. So there were all of these instances of things like that. Remember I said I was taking the bus all those ways?
Right.
So I grew up with her saying, you know, he's pretty smart. He always finds his way home. Right? And so that sense of faith in your ability to achieve, to do things. And it wasn't with pressure. It wasn't with anything like that. It was just absolute faith that people can do things. It was powerful. So anyway, if you want to know, that's Yvonne Patricia Solomon.